Some of you are calling in from the evening where you are or the afternoon, and so we're going to get started. And first, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the third workshop on how to write a better abstract, and we're so glad that you've joined us for this hour. We've already had two, and so we are glad that we have folks joining us from all over the world for the third workshop. And the best way I think we're going to run this is if you can sort of save your questions till the end, because we will have an open Q&A, or you can type them into the chat. Because we have people here on our call, Anushka will be collecting the questions and she will let us know at the end if we missed any. And so definitely type them into the chat or save them and unmute yourself at the end when we have time for questions. So like I mentioned, we welcome you to this third workshop, and we're so glad that you joined us. And we're going to move to the next slide, Anushka. My name is Kata, and I am the Director of Programs and the Director of the Annual Water and Health Conference at UNC. I have worked for the Institute now for maybe 11 years, and it's probably my 6th year directing the conference. And each year we try to improve everything about the conference. We're dedicated to continually improving what we do and how we do it. And so today we are joined by Musa Manga, Dr. Musa Manga, and Dr. Ryan Cronk, who will also be presenting. And so when they turn their cameras on, you can see their lovely smiling faces. They are both faculty in the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering, but they also work in partnership with the Water Institute. Oh, we've got somebody who needs to mute. Okay. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, we have the annual UNC Water and Health Conference, and it's probably going on its 14th year and hosted by the Water Institute here in UNC at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, for those of you who haven't been to the conference yet. We hold it every year in October. This year, it's going to be from October 14th to the 18th in person. We will have a limited virtual program for those of you who can't attend in person, but we certainly encourage you all to come to the Friday Center, to the lovely UNC campus, where we will host the conference in person here. And so if you can start applying for travel scholarships, if you need support, then we highly recommend that you start doing that now and start applying for your visas for travel and doing all the necessary things instead of leaving it to the last minute. But as I mentioned, our focus is on WASH, so anything related to water, sanitation, and hygiene and health, with an emphasis specifically on science, policy, and practice. So if you're doing research in any of those fields and you're trying to connect the dots and connect to the sector or have evidence and data to share, then we welcome you to the conference, especially if you're somebody who likes to learn from other folks and get to hear and see what other research is going on in the sector. It is a safe space. We want to make it a safe space for all those policy folks, practitioners, and scientists to come together in a meaningful way. So it's not just for engineers, and it's not just for policymakers, and it's not just for scientists. We want all of those folks coming together and talking to each other and learning from each other and sharing evidence and science in WASH so that we all improve. So a couple of high-level statistics from last year's conference, in case you haven't been before. We had over 2,000 virtual registrants that were registered to participate over the course of the week. We had over 800 people register for the in-person conference. They don't necessarily all show up on one day, but we do have over 800 people registered. But one thing that we do definitely want to encourage is people from all over the world to attend the conference and to submit their research. So we always have over 100 countries represented, and last year we were fortunate enough to have over 120 countries represented. And of those people that attended, we had over 81 academic institutions, universities, colleges from all over the world. We had 120 posters that were presented, close to 90 verbal presentations, and over 50 side events. And so if you're not familiar with our format for our conference, we definitely encourage you to check out the website where it breaks down what each of these events are and what the purpose for them are. And so if you're in academia, you'll understand what the posters are. You'll understand what a verbal presentation is. It's a series of verbal talks given by researchers to present their research. And then side events are learning events where consortiums and networks of people gather to share the latest learnings, the latest evidence, the latest science, the latest policies that impact their particular research. And then I will say that it's a highly competitive process, especially for our abstracts, in that this is probably a little bit liberal, but we have probably a 40% abstract acceptance rate, but that kind of means generally between 1 in 2, 1 in 3 abstracts gets accepted to the conference. And so if you score in the top 100, you're probably going to be offered a verbal presentation. And if you score in the top 200, you're offered a poster. And so we'll get into that in more detail, but I just wanted to let you know that it's a highly competitive process. And so we hold these workshops to help people get the support and strengthen their writing so they have a better chance of getting an abstract accepted to the conference. I'm also here to help remind you that all the abstracts are due by Friday, May 3rd at the close of the day by 11:59. And we will not be able to open the portal after that. So definitely get your abstract in by the due date and time. I think you all are familiar with the way that we do our scoring, but final scores and invitations to present your abstract, either in a verbal or a poster format, will be announced in July. And so that's why we highly recommend that you go ahead, if you plan to attend the conference, even before you get notice of whether or not your abstract is accepted for presentation, we highly recommend that you go ahead and start applying for your visas now and looking for those travel scholarships. A reminder that everybody who presents at the conference will need to register for the conference. And so I guess that's my gentle way of saying don't show up at the conference and then without paying, because then we will require that you pay before you enter the doors. So that's why we suggest that you go look for those travel scholarships now and make sure that you've got the support you need to attend the conference if you need it. And let's see, I'm going to point you towards the conference website. I'll always sort of point you back there so that you can get more information on the conference itself, but also we have some guidance documents there for how to write a better abstract from previous sessions. You can go and use those as reference materials. And registration links will be there. Any other information about the conference you can find on the conference website. So Anushka will share those links in the chat later on, but we highly encourage you to keep up with the conference through the website. Now, for those of you who haven't done this before, here's some guidance on how to submit an abstract. So you'll go to the website, the conference website, and you'll see the due date. It says that it's due May 1st, but it's actually due May 3rd, which I believe is a Friday. And you'll click that research abstract button for how to submit it through the portal. And then you'll follow the guidance from there. And so I highly recommend that you read the submission form carefully before writing and submitting your abstract. And so you don't have to do it the minute that you log in, but we do suggest that you get familiar with the form and that you complete it and that you're not in a rush. So don't leave it till 11:58 on May 3rd to submit your abstract and to get familiar with the form. Make sure that you're sort of checking it out and understanding what's required before you hit submit. Does that all make sense? Okay, good stuff. Here are some abstract requirements that we wanted to remind you about. Again, it's on the conference website, but here are some tips for you folks in that it must be received by the deadline. And again, I think that date is wrong. It's May 3rd, but they must be submitted online. So don't send it to the Water Institute email address. Definitely submit it through the portal because we aren't able to sort of accept and submit things on your behalf. And a reminder that the maximum allowance for word count is 500. So please don't go over. Our reviewers are not going to look beyond the 500 word count. At least they don't need to, and they're not forced to. So we will cut it off at the 500 word mark. So we highly recommend you refine your abstracts as you get to work on them. The title is limited to 15 words. So just be mindful that we don't want, a 50-word title. Keep it short and sweet and punchy, if that makes any sense. And you can ask Ryan and Musa for help with that as we go through the rest of the workshop. But also make sure that you include the themes in your abstract titles and that you complete everything as the form requests. And try not to submit them multiple times. Sometimes we're looking through the portal and we'll see somebody has submitted 3 different titles, but the same research. So maybe don't do that, but definitely get feedback from your peers or your academic advisors, and hopefully you'll have a better success rate and chance of getting your research recognized. And then here's a final reminder. I know you probably don't need a reminder, but again, we won't accept any plagiarized work. And so we will definitely screen all of the abstracts for plagiarism, and we will leave it up to best practice methods for determining whether people have used AI or if they are writing the abstract themselves. And so definitely just be reminded of that. You can also find the abstract rubric, and by rubric we mean how we score. So I think you all know that we go through a double-blind review process. So your reviewers don't know who you are. We remove identifiable information. So they're just looking at the content of your abstract. And so the first reviewer will go through your abstract and review it and score it. And they'll send it back to us, and then we'll send it to another reviewer to do the same review, and they'll score it. And then they will send it back to us, and we will combine your scores and put it through an algorithm. But here's the rubric for how we will score each and every abstract. And it's looking at originality, so whether or not your work is original, whether it's relevant to the field, the clarity of your writing and your research presentation, and the validity of your work. And so that is scored like this out of 3 for a total out of 12. So feel free to check out the rubric on the website, just so that you know and you're familiar with how we will score each and every one. And so one of the things that we also suggest is that people can go and look at previous abstract books. Don't cut and paste, don't copy, and don't plagiarize. However, if you want to see examples from previous years and successful abstracts or impactful research that was going on, then I highly recommend that you look at the conference website and check out last year's abstract book. And there you can see the type of research that other people are presenting and other abstracts that people have submitted and were successful. So definitely check that out. And I think here we have a little arrow pointing you to the website where you can find that. And Anushka's included that, I think, in the link in the chat. Okay. So moving right along, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Musa Manga from the Department of ESC here at UNC in the Gilling School of Global Public Health, and he is also adjunct to the Water Institute and a longtime conference abstract submitter and reviewer. So Musa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kata. I don't know if everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you so much for joining today's session. I'm actually going to talk about how to structure an abstract and what exactly do you need to include in this abstract to have it as a strong abstract. But I'll start by pointing you to one of our sessions that were recorded some time back that you could actually visit and then try to watch some of these tutorials to help you improve on how you prepare your abstract. As I want to remind you that we know you already done this over time, but we're only giving you pointers to actually improve the quality of your abstract. Next. All right. What do you need to include in an abstract? Ideally, an abstract should actually have 4 sections. And I would recommend when you're writing your abstract, at least try to point the reader to some of these sections. And the section should be the background, the methods, the results, and the conclusions. As you write your abstract, it is great that you could tell the person reviewing your abstract that this is the section of my background. This is the section of my methods. This is the section of my results. And these are bits of my conclusion. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to try to unpack all these sections to talk to you about what should be included in each of these sections. What is important that you shouldn't miss out in any of these sections. Next. So let me start with the background section. When you talk about the background section, the first thing that has to come into your mind is think about the why question. Why are you doing, why did you do this research? And why do you think it's important? So one of the things we need you to do is to provide information onto the why. And this would help us to understand what was the reason for the motivation for your research. What was the objective of your research? 3 things we would recommend. If you could tell us or produce or give for us a big picture of the problem that you're trying to solve, that would be great. Because then if someone is reviewing your abstract, gets to understand why you actually, what's the big problem that you're trying to solve. It's important you follow this with at least a sentence to tell us the gap you're trying to actually address. It's very important if you could tell us clearly, what is the knowledge gap? What is this gap that you think your work is trying to address? And then the last sentence would be, what are the objectives? What are the research questions that you try to address in your work to solve this problem? If you could give us those 4 sentences, that would be great. But one thing to remind you, that the reviewers of these abstracts are people in the sector. They know well about WASH. Don't waste your time giving us 10 sentences at the beginning of the abstract. They already know much of that. Just give them the big picture of the problem and then start to narrow down on why you did this study. Next. The other section that's very important is the method section. Ideally, what we want to understand here is to give us an overview of what's your research design. How did you try to answer the objectives you're set to do? So in most cases, one of the things I would want to point out here is there are different research. We know some people actually from the public health, other from engineering, other doing, kind of lab-based. What I'm providing here is some of the key pointers that could guide your method section. So ideally, it's important to tell us about your research design and the research methods, but also tell us more of the type of research you're talking about in your abstract. Is this a formative kind of research? Is it a randomized control trial? Try to bring out that. And then it's important to include some key pointers, key important details about what's your sample size, what's the study location. This helps the reader to contextualize when he's reading your results. And I don't expect you to write so much because you have only 500 words. We want you to only give a reader a snapshot of what methods did you follow to answer the objectives. Next. So if you look at here, I've tried to provide you some of the questions, and these questions should be able to guide your methodology I don't expect you to include each and everything here. These are just pointers as to how to improve your method section or your abstract. So it's important to tell us about what activities were done, when did you do them, and what data was collected. Did you have any control group or intervention group? So all these are questions that actually are very key in trying to help you strengthen your abstract. As I said, do not spend all your entire abstract. Don't write all your abstract on the methods alone, because we only need to know what exactly did you do to understand how rigorous was your study and how did you do it. Next. So the most interesting part for readers are the results section. Of course, we know you took years to do this study. And we know it's going to, if I tell you to write, you write 20 pages, but you have 500 words. So what we need you to tell us is summarize for us the main results of your study. Give us the highlights of the key important results. And these results should be the ones that inform your conclusions. But also, remember you told us your objectives. Make sure these results are answering the objectives you set at the beginning of the abstract. Because as we're reviewing, you've given us the problem, you've told us the objectives you want to do, you've given us the methods. When we look at the results, we want to go back and see if you answered what you promised at the beginning. So make sure you bring out that. But importantly, it's important to give us some specific details about your statistical results. What's the p-value? Because what we want to see are the results informed by evidence? Are the results informed by the kind of statistical test you did? We don't want some, what usually happens when I'm reviewing some of the papers and as I serve on several editorial boards, is you read an abstract and you see results being put forward and you don't see anything to support or to tell us where the results are coming from. So make sure you give us some of these points. Next. So this is the last kind of section that is really needed in your abstract, is the conclusion. It's always not good to write, your background, you give us your, objectives, give us your methodology, give us your results, and you don't close the whole story. It's like a storyline. We want you to close and tell us what are the key conclusions, what are the key takeaways from the study you've actually done. And we look at giving us about 2 to 3 sentences that these should be key things that tell us what have you learned or what do we learn from your study. In some cases, I usually look for also what they call an implication statement, one sentence that will tell us the implication of your results. So it's very important to tell us how does your results inform the sector or helps us to do better. One important thing I would probably remind you is do not try to put big claims that are not supported by your results and not supported by any of what you've put at the beginning of the method section or at the beginning of the abstract. I would recommend you, when you're putting a conclusion, make sure this conclusion is being informed by all the previous sections you've been writing. And if you do that, your abstract will be a very strong abstract. Next. So I want to stop by talking about the AI. I know we are in the age whereby everyone is using AI, artificial intelligence. I want to recommend that every work you submit should be the work done by the group, the research group, the authors. And we do not recommend and we prohibit the use of AI because we will know, we can easily tell, or whoever is reviewing your abstract, because these are people who have been reading and they already know, they can tell what an AI writing is. So please try to avoid this. And also, we actually recommend that you should try as much as possible to acknowledge if you really use the AI, but we wouldn't recommend you using it. For now, I'll stop there. Thank you so much, and I'll get this back to Kata.
Hi, thanks, Musa, for that insight into how to structure an abstract. And now I will introduce Dr. Ryan Cronk from the Water Institute to present the next section, which will delve more into how you go about actually writing an abstract and capturing your research in a more effective way. And so, Ryan, if I can get you to join, that would be great.
Great, thanks, Kata. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I'm going to talk about how to make an abstract interesting to make sure that your work is best characterized and is a great fit for the conference. So three kind of high-level points are: one, as you're structuring, Musa talked about the form and structure of an abstract. As you're creating your abstract, you want to start broad and talking about the large problem that wants to be solved. And an important note here for this conference: this is a WASH conference, and so you don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time and space convincing us that WASH is important. The review panel and your audience are going to know a lot of the basic statistics. So you don't have to write it as if you're writing to an audience that needs to be convinced of the importance of WASH. Once you kind of establish your high-level framing, you want to get specific. This is a specific conference on WASH and water and health, so you do want to make sure that in your work you're highlighting the results that are interesting and new and important for the sector, especially in terms of policy, programming, and practice. So this isn't a conference that's a great place to submit a lot of the same old findings, things that we already know and are well established. We want to see in your work how you're growing and expanding beyond sort of the status quo, if that makes sense. And then finally, as you get towards the end of your abstract, you want to broaden your findings again. You want to describe what this means for you and others. You specifically want to highlight the importance and implications of your work for WASH science, policy, programming, and practice. So if framed differently, how do the findings of your project advance the science and/or contribute to policy and programming and practice in a meaningful way for the WASH sector? Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to work through a few frequently asked questions that we often get on these webinars and from previous years and folks that email us. So I already kind of covered some of this work, and so we'll go on to the next slide, please. This first question we have is, when submitting an abstract, how much is too much theory and how much is not enough empirical results? So it's really going to depend on the work that you're submitting. Just because this is a water and health and a WASH conference doesn't mean that we only accept specific types of studies, right? Where there's a lot of diversity at the UNC Water and Health Conference on the types of studies that are presented. Sometimes they're randomized controlled trials, sometimes they're observational studies, sometimes they're surveys, sometimes it's qualitative, sometimes it's case studies. We encourage a diversity of methodological approaches that are submitted to the conference. If you are a social scientist and you're presenting some adaptation of let's say an existing theory, but you're adapting it to a water and health context, you may want to present some of that information. If you're doing a very quantitative study, you probably want to dig more into your empirical results. You don't need to give us, prove the underlying theorem behind linear regression or your statistical model. You don't have enough space to do that in your abstract. So the next question, after complying with the editorial guidelines of a journal, how can a novice writer make the abstract interesting for it to be accepted in the conference? Again, I'm just going to reiterate, because this is really important, to focus on what is new and interesting about your work as compared to what's already been done. So again, as Kata mentioned, it's good to read the abstracts that were highly rated from previous years. What were the characteristics of those studies that set them apart from other abstracts you might have seen or read? The other important thing is to make sure you are communicating it very clearly and succinctly. You don't need to try to write super long sentences or try to impress folks with complex terminology. Typically, simpler is better. The next question here we have is around abbreviations. So when writing your abstract, do you have to use the full name of a pathogen that you're researching, or should you use only abbreviation? So probably the only acronym you can get away with using is maybe UNC or WASH. Those are going to be known by the abstract reviewers. But otherwise, I would recommend that you spell out the first instance of your phrase or word before using an abbreviation. So in this case, this person wanted to know if they could just use MTB instead of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And I would recommend that you first spell out the pathogen, and then in parentheses, you can add MTB, and then to save space in the rest of your abstract, you're welcome to use MTB, as long as it's established what you mean. Next question. What is the basis for decision for a verbal or poster presentation? It all comes down to score. As Kata mentioned, these are double-blind reviewed. We don't know whose abstracts we're reviewing, and that reviewers don't know who else is reviewing, and sort of other staff help compile these scores. So it all comes down to score. So please be sure to review the abstract criteria and make sure that you feel comfortable that you are addressing all those points to get the maximum amount of points on each of the criteria. Is there a fee to pay for presenting? Fees are, again, those are all available on our conference website. There's no fee to present, but you do have to register to attend the conference to present. So you do have to pay to attend the conference. But there's no additional fee if you're presenting. Everyone has to pay to show up in person, no extra fee to present. But you do have to pay to come to the conference. Question around, can there be a group presentation? No, we do not allow group presentations. These are timed slots. It's roughly 12 to 15 minutes per presentation. And so it's a little bit awkward if you have several presenters trying to present your work. So it's strongly discouraged, and we don't typically ever allow it. Typically what happens is whomever submits, I'm going to mention this later, but typically whomever submits and this links actually to the next question, I'd recommend that whoever you plan to have present at the conference submit the abstract. That might not be the first author. However, you cannot present if you're not also an author on the work, right? So, if I'm working on a paper, I can't call up Musa. Hey, Musa, I can't make it to the conference. Could you present this work on my behalf? That if he's not also a co-author, he can't present that work. So that's an important distinction. Next question is, should the presenter necessarily be the lead author of the abstract? Also for co-authored papers or abstracts, what modality exists for presentations? I'll just elaborate a bit more on this. So in the portal, submission portal, whomever submits the abstract is the primary point of contact for the conference organizing committee. So we don't contact, if you have, say, 4 co-authors, we only contact the one person who submitted the abstract. We have their email account. We don't have anyone else's emails. So it's your responsibility as the abstract submitter to communicate with everyone else on your authorship team on the status of your abstract. Again, we highly recommend that if you already know in advance the person most likely to attend the conference to present the work, that they go ahead and be the person who submits the abstract. That makes it a lot easier. We can change it after the fact, but it's much easier for our conference staff if you kind of configure that out up front. But we totally understand that circumstances change, and that always happens each year that someone else presents. Next slide, please. So this kind of just elaborates a bit more on what I said. You have to be a first or co-author to present. We only communicate with the abstract submitter. It is the abstract submitter's responsibility to communicate with the conference staff and to all abstract submitters. So, whomever is submitted the abstract, you're also communicating with the conference committee. You need to confirm that you're available to come and present. So don't assume that someone else on your team is doing that because they're not. We also recommend that this criteria for determining authorship, ICMJE. There are others. PLOS has authorship criteria. Many journals have authorship criteria. I'd recommend that you read and review these criteria before you submit your abstract to understand who is an author on your project and who is not, and who should be just acknowledged in your sort of acknowledgement slide of your presentation. Next slide, please. What's the best way to come up with a title? Yeah, this is a great question. This is the most important part of your presentation. And for your, if you submit to a journal, it's really important to make sure you have a title that clearly describes what it is you're doing. It's succinct. Someone who might not be an exact expert in the topic can understand what it is you're doing. So make sure that you do invest a lot of time on your title and perhaps iterate several times to make sure that you come up with a great title. How do I make sure I have given relevant and the most important results? So there's several ways to do this. One is to look at similar research and look at what did you find that confirms what other studies have found, what was different, what was new. You'll definitely want to focus on presenting what was new, and how does the work that you did advance the knowledge in the topic of interest. So again, you don't want to spend all of your space in your abstract presenting results that are already well established in the field. You want to present things that are new and novel. Another thing that I like to do personally is if let's say I think about this from a perspective of a paper, I might make a list of maybe the 10 or 15 findings from my research, and then I might organize those bullet points into a ranking of what's most important to least important, and then I try to fit as many of the most important findings into my abstract. That I often can only include maybe 3 to 5 of the most important findings. And you might work with your co-authors to help to figure out what they think is the most important and relevant. This next question is the main factors for a successful abstract. Again, the criteria, common reasons why abstracts are not accepted. Oftentimes they're not well written. They don't communicate the science on what you did. So again, we can't help you write a better we can help you write a better abstract, but we can't improve your research. So if the underlying research has flaws and problems, we can't help you with that. So definitely work with your mentors and your collaborators to make sure that the work that you're presenting and the work that you're doing is scientifically sound. Next slide, please. This next question is interesting. This person's interested in learning how to write outstanding abstract content using secondary data or open data sources. The process for writing abstracts is the same. There are plenty of data, open source and secondary data sets that have a lot of interesting findings, that have lots of novel findings that are relevant to the conference. You write these up in the same way that you would any other study finding. Just make sure, again, you're highlighting the most important things that highlight how your product's interesting, new, and advances the field. The next question has to do with writing literature review abstracts, in different types of literature reviews, things like a rapid review versus a literature review versus a systematic review. There's plenty of guidance out there around how to structure a systematic review and literature review abstract. I would definitely make sure you follow those criteria, things like Prisma, even a rapid review. Those have formal structures, and I'd highly recommend that you follow well-established criteria. You can Google around, look at the Equator Network and other places. A lot of journals have guidance on how to report abstracts or write abstracts for reviews. Next question, please. Next slide. Is it significantly different from presenting at a non-WASH related conference? Our conference is very similar to other conferences. We have timed presentations. It's important that once you receive information about the amount of time that you have to present, that you practice and make sure that you are presenting in the allocated time. We have timekeepers in each room and a moderator, and the moderator will cut you off if you don't finish. So you have to practice. We do this for a number of reasons. One is because we have concurrent presentations going on in different rooms, and sometimes people like to move between rooms, and so we like to everyone in the whole building is switching between presenters at the same time. So typically the way it works, again, we'll have more guidance closer to the conference. You have about 12 to 15 minutes to present, and then 5 minutes for question and answers. And we'll hold you to strict accountability on those time limits. Finally, the last question here is about specific length of sentences. I would highly recommend that you write shorter sentences, you avoid use of jargon, write clearly and succinctly. This will help your readers and presenters and your abstract reviewers understand what it is you're doing. Next slide, please. Just to let you know, we are working on a partnership with PLOS. We did this last year, and we're hoping to do it again this year. It's a special collection where work from the conference can be submitted to these two really great journals. And it's a great opportunity to highlight your work. And it's a great way to have some additional advertising of your work. So the special collection is curated, and then it gets sent around to conference participants. And so stay tuned for additional details. We're hoping to fully announce this partnership in advance of the conference this year. Last year, it was announced at the conference. So you'll have time in advance to start working on, if you're accepted to the conference, you'll have time to start working on your research article as well. Next slide. I think I'm turning it back over to Kata.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I just wanted to make an announcement that we are doing a special call for abstracts for this year's conference. It's not to deter you from submitting your research that you've already planned, so definitely go ahead and submit your planned abstracts. But I did want to let people know about this special call for what we're calling the unfinished business of WASH in high-income countries. So if you happen to be doing research on WASH-related issues related to high-income countries, definitely consider submitting your abstract and a side event for the conference this year. And so some of the themes that we're looking for people to submit could be related, doesn't have to be, but could be related to environmental justice, water quality and PFAS or lead in drinking water, well water and private systems, agriculture and the impact of agricultural work on and hog farms on water, wastewater surveillance, rural WASH, disaster management in high-income countries. Any of those and all of those we would consider as part of this conference. So if you are working, don't make something up to submit, but if you happen to be working on these topics, then we would be happy to receive an abstract for this special call. And then when you go to submit your abstract, we definitely have the option to click the submit under a special call. And so definitely make sure that you include any research that you're doing in this particular area or themes related to WASH in high-income countries. But again, we're taking all the planned abstracts. So this is just in case you are also working on topics related to high-income WASH areas of research. So with that being said, and with the presentations being done, I want to see if there are any additional questions that you may have that weren't answered during our presentation today or not answered in the chat. Go ahead and either type them out or unmute and ask your question.
Hi,
Hello.
hello, this is Melissa from Ethiopia.
Hello, Melissa. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the good presentation and highlights about abstract. So thank you all presenter. I am I have one I do have one question.
Sure.
Would you share this all you know presentation and videos? Can you share us
We
because this
will.
is
We will
important too.
post. Yep. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Because this is very important for you know for the preparation of the abstract. So it's better to share for us.
Yeah, I should have
Okay.
mentioned that at the beginning of the presentation that we definitely want you to take notes and to remember and to pay attention, but we will also be posting, it might not be this exact workshop, but we will be posting a recorded version of the workshop so that you can go back and use it for reference material and you can not have to take so many notes at the moment. But yes, we will share this with you, but we also have resources from last year posted and they haven't changed so much. We've just made some special announcements today for this year, but the content and the instructions for how to write a better abstract are the same or similar to last year. So don't think that you have to wait for this in order to get support. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And somebody asked, David asked, you'd like to present an abstract on data from fieldwork. You just completed it. It's not yet fully analyzed. Yes, you can definitely submit this if it hasn't been analyzed and you're going to work on it. But we will be asking folks that if you get closer to the date and you have been accepted to present because your abstract has been reviewed but you still haven't completed the field work or you still haven't completed the analysis and you won't by the time of the conference, we will ask you to let us know, reach out and let us know that you won't be complete and withdraw out of your own goodness of and best practice is to let the conference folks know that you won't be ready in time and that you will withdraw just because it's a highly competitive process and you would be taking the space of somebody who could possibly present their work. And so we definitely want to make sure that we give you the time and the ability to submit and to work on your analysis. But if you're not going to be ready in time to present it, then please let us know as soon as possible and we will give that position to somebody who wants and needs it. But yeah, you can mention preliminary results in your abstract. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Oh, it depends. It depends. And so this year we are planning to focus the Friday of the conference on WASH in high income countries. And so we will let people know about this program later on. And so right now we're just building the program. And so definitely keep in touch with us and we'll be making announcements to let people know about the official sort of day that's focused on that. But special announcements, it just depends. So we sent out an email that made the announcements for the special call for abstracts. So if you're not on our listserv, contact the Institute and we'll definitely try to get you on the listserv so you are aware of all the announcements that are coming out. And so Lalit, I think you were asking for sample abstracts. Again, we would point you to the website to see previous years. So there we have all of the abstracts that were accepted to the conference, collated into one book, an abstract book. And so definitely check out the abstract book to see examples of previous abstracts that have been submitted and successful for presentation. I hope that answers your question. David, I hope I answered your question, and Katie. Yeah, you can definitely, if it's WASH related, you can definitely submit your abstract next year. Any other questions for Musa or for Ryan or for myself? Again, just a reminder, we will post all this information, all the supplemental material on the website. So check back in with the website and feel free to email the Water Institute if you have additional questions. Here is the link and the email address. And so definitely check back in. Jane, I see your hand. Do you have a question? Hello, Jane. It's lovely to see you.
Hi, Kaida. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hope you are well too.
I'm excited just to hear your voice. It's been a while.
Thank you. It's been a minute. I'm happy to hear from you too.
Sure. I already put my question in
Okay.
the chat, but I just want to emphasize, we always try to encourage, especially our government colleagues, to participate, to pick interest, to look for resources to support them to participate. But they
Yes.
always come back and say, we don't do research. So how do we participate and feel, comfortable? Our policy work, our practice work.
Mhm.
So sometimes even when we were looking at the template together, because we want to do something with the Ministry of Water and Environment in Uganda, a side event at UNC, and they were like, oh, but this is research, this is findings, this is methodology, we don't have that, but we have something to share, something that we have practiced, something that is related to policy. We've just had our national policy revised and soon coming out, sharing the experiences around that. So how do we really go about that and make sure that they don't feel that it is research, academic, and the results have to be really in that, following that angle,
Right.
but looking at it from space to share what they are doing. We do that in IRC. We do research, we do studies and stuff, but we don't want to continue speaking to ourselves. I want our government colleagues to to also, participate.
Yeah.
And they've been participating in the last 2-3 years, but still the same questions come up. This research, these studies, this methodology, and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent questions, and I hope I will do justice to to answering them. In that, the abstracts are a very academic and scientifically recognized way of presenting research, and so we definitely, because we are an academic institute and the conference is hosted by an academic institution on an academic campus, obviously, first and foremost, we will make sure that what we do is evidence-based and data-driven and science-driven, because that's what we're trying to advance through the Water Institute. But where I would highly encourage everybody who has something to share with the sector to help us improve, so that's evidence, that's science, that is experience, those are lessons learned. If you have those to share with the sector so that we all do better, then that is best captured in a side event. Side events are meant to be adult learning collaborative spaces, safe spaces where you can present a case study or present something that's not necessarily strictly research, because we don't accept just lectures for our side event. It has to be, and I think yours is perfect for this, in that it is a consortium. It's a network of folks that are coming together to share lessons learned. And so we definitely encourage you to partner with government, to have experience with connecting a policy with how they've managed to roll it out, or some of the challenges that they've experienced, and how they worked with universities and implementing organizations to improve a policy or a practice, or they've advanced the science, or they've advanced something in WASH that we can all benefit from. So I would encourage you to look at the side event rubric. So there are the form that you submit when you submit a side event. It tells you all the things that we look for a successful side event submission. And that's something like the strength of the consortium that's submitting this. So we want to see a diversity of groups, not just all academic universities or all practitioners or all of anything. We'd like to see a diverse representation from all across the sector in your side event. Also, you know, what kind of products are coming out of your side event? Are you going to be writing a report? Are you going to be helping support and strengthen a network? Or are you writing a publication because of all the lessons that you've learned? Or are you building a network because of what you're doing in your particular session? So we look at all these different things, which is different than the academic research abstracts. We definitely want you to be evidence-based in your side events and not just talking about all the good things and presenting photos from, of children using water points all over the world. That's not the hope for a side event. It's really to share lessons and information and ways to help the sector do better in a particular field. So it could be on anything related to WASH. So does that answer your question, Jane? In that we highly encourage you to work with government to submit a side event. We highly encourage like a diversity of voices in your session, and it doesn't have to be all academic or presented in a research structure where we're talking about background methods. That's for our abstracts. Side events are most meant to be interactive and inclusive and diverse, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaida.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I hope to see you at this year's conference.
Oh, yes, you'll see me. You can't avoid me this year.
Okay, good. Good. Is there a cash allowance for travel to participate? That came in from the STARS Foundation. There isn't. You can apply for travel scholarships. And so we will be posting any opportunities that we have to offer travel scholarships. But we highly recommend that you look to your own institutions or look for travel scholarships where you're at and find ways to help support you get to the conference if you don't have a sponsoring organization or institution. So we can't sort of give travel scholarships to cover everything. So for example, if you apply and we offer you a travel scholarship, it will be for one component of the entire conference package. So you'll have to think about your airfare. So if you're coming from overseas to the US, then you will need to think about how much it costs for a plane ticket. And then you will have to think about how much it will cost for your accommodations. And you will have to think about what it costs for registering to come to the conference. And so if you get a travel scholarship, we can offer one of those components, but we will not be offering your entire conference package. So we can't cover your airfare, your registration, and your accommodations, all of it at once per person. We can just offer you one of those things if you get accepted. And a priority goes to people who have had a successful abstract score, if that makes sense. So definitely go out and try to look for support from other sources and check back in when we announce our travel scholarship portal. And we wish you best of luck at trying to find support from other areas if you need to cover all of those expenses. But we do have a reduced rate for students. So definitely that helps, but also, look for other support if you can. And start that process now, just because we know it takes time to get a visa and to find opportunities and be successful at applying for these kinds of scholarships and awards. Any other question? you can check out the website. We have the visa portal open. We don't announce it typically until we open registration, but if you need to submit a visa application now, then please reach out to the Water Institute at the email address that you see on the screen and ask for a letter of invitation to the conference. And then the conference hotels, we will announce when we open registration. But typically there's 4 hotels that we partner with to offer a discounted conference rate. So be sure to check back in. But if you need sort of that information immediately, then definitely reach out to the Water Institute, and we'd be happy to share the hotels that we've used in the past, but ones that we might not have partnership with at the moment. So just give us a bit more time to establish rates, but we will try to announce those as soon as possible. We will try to open registration in June or July at the latest, when we announce abstract scores and offer presentations, so that you can get to work on a real effort to get your visa to present here at the conference. And you are very welcome for the presentations today to DL. We really enjoy connecting with all of you. You are what make the conference. We mean it, and we don't have the conference for ourselves. We have it for you and for the sector, so that we all do better and we all share the latest science and findings and lessons with each other, so that we all do better and have a greater impact in the world and give people better sustainable access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene services for the planet. And so each one of you are a part of that. And we thank you for joining us today on this workshop, and hope it was helpful to you. Again, make sure you don't forget to submit on time, and check back in with the website. And we look forward to seeing you in person if we're so lucky. And we hope that you have a lovely week, and you're very welcome, Alizar, and thank you for the kind words. And we hope to see you in October. Have a lovely evening, afternoon, wherever you may be.
Thank you.